Hey everyone, Dave here with another video in our real estate education series. This is one of my favorite topics, which are co-living spaces. We'll talk about first, what is a co-living space? And it's the practice of a small number, usually 2 to 5, of unrelated people living in a single dwelling unit that has some shared facilities. The easiest way to explain it to people is college living for adults. Tenants typically pay monthly to rent the space. And landlords typically pay for most or all of the utilities because most of it is a shared space. An important distinction, it is not a rooming or boarding house with large number of people occupying a single dwelling unit and often characterized by crime and other problems. So you have to explain that to people that you're doing business with. So some examples of co-living spaces. The examples that I've seen that have the most sharing would be 3 people living in a unit. Each person has their own bedroom, but a common bathroom and common kitchen are shared. Maybe there is a common living space and maybe there isn't. This is great for older people on a fixed income and really trying to manage expenses, but also they may live alone in other circumstances and want at least some socialization. And kind of middle ground for sharing, there may be private bathrooms in some of the units. Again, all 3 will share a single kitchen. That's important for code reasons. And again, there may or may not be a common living area. These kinds of spaces are great for young people. They're budget conscious. They've just gotten out of college and are used to these kinds of shared spaces. And then finally, one that's basically like a normal apartment, except for the fact that there's a shared kitchen. Maybe it's just 2 people and they have their own bathroom, their own bedroom, their own living space. And this can be great for professionals who want to live near restaurants, bars, and other attractions, but don't want to pay in some cases, very high rent in order to do so. So here's some examples of co-living spaces. And so this is part of a triplex that I own in Philadelphia. And you can see here, there's a bedroom here and a bedroom here. This bedroom has its own private bathroom. This bedroom, actually, it also has its own private bathroom. And then each unit shares this common kind of kitchen and living area. It's mostly a kitchen and then just a small living space. So that's an example of one type of co-living space. Here's an example of a project that we're working on right now in Allentown. And this is the as-built drawing. And so you can see here, this floor just has 1 bathroom. It's got that set of steps leading down to the basement. And we have what would traditionally be 2 bedrooms and then a living area. And it would be as if it is a 2-bedroom apartment. I'm showing the kind of in-progress work that you do when you're designing these spaces. And so we're having to put in a new bathroom here. This becomes a bedroom. This becomes a bedroom. This is a living area for this half of the floor. And then this is a living area for the other half of the floor. You'll see it's kind of obvious from the final version what we had to do. And so it's the same story here. So it's a top and a bottom, and this is 1 unit here and 1 unit here, or 1 tenant. It's all in 1 unit, but it's 1 tenant. And so this is a bathroom or bedroom. This is a living area. This is kind of more studio style is the best way to lay it out, where this is a bedroom and spills into a living area. This is a new bathroom here. And then a kitchen that each tenant can access. Finally, this is an outside patio area and a storage unit. And you'll see a couple of things here also. One is the stairs to the basement are gone, so that we could create more space in this unit for this tenant. And then the second is, and we've done this in a couple of different spaces, we wanted to have this bathroom have a nice big shower. And so it ends up being shower, toilet, and then a sink out in the hallway. That may seem weird, but believe it or not, tenants prefer that, to have the bigger shower and more space in here and don't mind walking out to the hallway. And it's only their hallway. It's not shared with anybody else. But you have to do those kinds of creative things in this kind of space. So advantages of co-living spaces. First of all, they're more profitable. I'll show you the math on that later on. Vacancy, if you think about it. So lower vacancy rates when 1 tenant leaves. If you have a duplex, has a tenant on the first floor, a tenant on the second floor. If 1 leaves, you instantly have 50% vacancy. But if you're doing it as a shared space with 3 tenants on each floor, and one leaves, your vacancy rate is only 17%. And then third, there's some areas that are grossly underserved in terms of affordable housing. A lot of this can go toward low or fixed income tenants. You may also find special interest groups that are interested in this kind of housing. For example, neurodiverse communities, people who are residing on various points of the autism spectrum. Shared housing in some cases, or at least in some areas, is good for that group. And then returning citizens, recently released felons who are reentering society, or victims of domestic abuse or human trafficking. I've seen instances of all of these set up as co-living spaces. So how many people can live together? Most municipalities typically spell out how many unrelated people can be in a unit. It typically ranges from 3 to 5, sometimes it's 2. In very strange instances, municipalities don't set a unit or a limit. But again, you want to have spaces that are decent for people where they each have a reasonable amount of space. You'll find this in the zoning code. It's often spelled out in the definition of a family in the code. Most zoning codes are keyword searchable. And in fact, I'll show you an example of that, how easy this is to find. So if we go over to the internet here, we're doing a search on Bethlehem, PA zoning ordinance. So we click on the zoning ordinance and up it comes. And so then you say, I'm going to search for family. Okay, wow, got 24 instances of this. Oh no, got 120 instances of this. So we kind of start clicking through and reading what all these things are. Not seen as a definition yet. Single family, double family, or two family, multifamily. Click through all this. Okay, you see the in quotes. So that's a dwelling unit. We're still not quite there. Let's go down here. Okay, family. 2 or more individuals who are related to each other by blood, marriage, or adoption. And right here is the important sentence, or up to 4 persons who are not related, who maintain a common household with common cooking facilities. So that right there means that up to 4 unrelated people in Bethlehem can share a space or a dwelling unit. That's where you can find it in zoning codes. Now we just covered what a sample family definition is. We can skip past that. And so, you can have neighboring towns each have different definitions. So here's where I am in Eastern Pennsylvania. Allentown's code calls out 2 unrelateds. Bethlehem, we just saw, is 4 unrelateds. Easton, right next door, is 3 unrelateds. I also have some property in Philadelphia, and that also happens to be 3 unrelateds as well. Let's get rid of the comments here. Okay. So who chooses to live in co-living spaces? And we've talked about this a little bit. In many cases, people who can't afford their own apartment, they appreciate one low rent check and all utilities included. And they look for utility or amenities such as fully furnished units and on-site laundry. Younger social tenants, we talked about that. These people had a very positive image or a positive experience coming out of college. And they like the savings that they can get and may value some privacy by getting a private bathroom. Finally, we talked about special needs populations, neurodiverse, returning citizens, recovering addicts. And, we may think negatively about these kinds of populations, but they are in a lot of cases end up being great tenants for a variety of reasons. I've either experienced this directly or heard about it indirectly. So if you're so inclined, this is a great way to serve these special populations. How is a dwelling unit defined? This is important. So the dwelling unit has to contain at least 1 bathroom. Almost always it can only have 1 kitchen from a fire safety standpoint. So if you're thinking, I can do these and each person can have a kitchen in their own room, no, it's generally not allowed. But you can provide a microwave, a small fridge, and a cooktop. And then that's a place that they can at least prepare some food in their own space. So the math, let's look at this. Co-living versus traditional rentals. So this is an example of a duplex that I actually own in Philadelphia. If it were its own, top bottom, each floor could rent out at $1,200 per floor, but the 3 rooms on each floor can be rented for $700 each. When we rent this traditionally, utility costs are $50 a month. Traditionally, they balloon up to $650 a month when rented as a co-living space, again, because you're paying for all of it. And so this is kind of some more detail. Let's go to the comparison from a net operating income standpoint. When you subtract out vacancies in a traditional setting, you'd get $2,280 in rent per month versus $3,780 for a co-living space. Yes, you pay more in utilities and property management, but taxes, insurance, maintenance are the same. So there's our monthly net operating income for each. And then total, you're looking at about $19,000 for a traditional space and $28,000 for a co-living space. Ideal neighborhoods. So we want to have good access to mass transit or ample parking. You don't want to ruin neighborhoods by packing a bunch of people in there and creating parking problems. If these are older, lower income tenants who don't have cars, we want them to have access to employers, medical facilities, and grocery stores, either via mass transit or walking. And then again, for younger people, it's great to have these in districts that are walkable to bars, restaurants, or other attractions, or via a short ride share. Property selection. Best is to have either a freestanding or an end unit. Want to make sure each tenant's bedroom has a source of natural lighting. Middle units don't work well. Long, thin buildings do. This layout tends to work well in giving people access to common areas and then having their own private space kind of along the line. Larger multi-unit buildings work better than single families. You do get economies of scale here, which make more sense in multi-units. You can get single families to work, but typically you got to have at least 5 people unrelated people in a unit there for it to make sense economically. And then find a realtor who gets what you're trying to do. It can save you a lot of time and a lot of effort if they understand the type of building and the municipality that you want to rent in. And it's a bonus, actually, if the realtor is also themselves a real estate investor. It'll make it even better in terms of the properties that they're showing to you. Rehab considerations. Find buildings that will work as a long, thin duplex with all rooms along a single or a central hallway. Find buildings that work well with modest upgrades. So a triplex may have 3 existing bathrooms, and then you can split the halls in 2 or the floors in 2 and add an additional bathroom. That's not bad from a rehab standpoint. And definitely compare the cost of rehabbing versus the cost of traditionally renting it. I've actually made this mistake and needed to spend so much money on a rehab. I was probably better off just renting it traditionally. So be careful. You can easily overrun your rehab budgets. We covered this pretty much on the last slide. Design considerations. We talked about this too. Private bathrooms are more important to a lot of renters. In general, larger bathrooms are preferred, even if you have to give up some living space. Definitely want to make sure each tenant has storage space in the form of closets and shelves. If you can get away with or get basement storage, that's a bonus. And then on-site laundry is a huge plus, particularly if you're in a cold or wet or both environment. I have had to take laundry outside to go do it. It's no fun. So try to give people that within the building is a big deal. Hiring a property manager. Ideally, you want to find someone who's already doing this with a co-living space. If they do, ask to see their house rules. That help tenants get along. We'll cover those more later. You'll probably end up paying more in terms of a percentage of rents for your property manager to manage these kinds of spaces. I've seen as low as 8%, but 10% usually is a minimum, and it could be upwards of 15% depending on the type of space and the number of room turns that are typical. And then if you do plan on doing work yourself, you can ask your property manager, do they have contractors that they're already working with or recommend to help you out with the rehab? Finally, if you can't find anybody who's managing co-living spaces, you can at least ask if they're already working with the demographic you're targeting. Ask how They would advertise vacancies in this space and make sure it's in areas that your prospective tenants will be looking. And then again, we talked about costs and how much they'll charge for room turns. It's particularly important if these spaces will turn over frequently. Tenant relations. This is all about house rules. You'll want your tenants to sign these as an addendum to the lease. Biggest topics tend to relate to noise and cleanliness. If they don't follow these rules, this is a breach of lease and they can be exited and evicted. And you want to make sure, again, noise. You want to set the expectations that tenants work together themselves. And so if they can't resolve it, it's kind of viewed as a last resort. But even they should be looking to local dispute resolution services. And then finally, make sure that there are tenants and provisions in there about parking, and who can park where. More on house rules. And that is it for our presentation. So thanks for watching. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out by email. Take care.